Okay. All right. So, what's going on, family? What's going on? Peace and shalom. It's Divine Prospect, Kingdom Harbinger Ministries. You already know what it is. Thank y'all for tuning in. This is a brief wind down Wednesday session. We're at the end of the month. And before going to bed, I want to do a quick live stream so I can get an additional live stream in for the month of July. And touch bases with y'all real quick for those who are up and watching. Those of you who are viewing this after hours or after the session is over, thank you for tuning in as well. I'm not going to go too deep tonight because, again, it's late. It's Wednesday. And I just wanted to check in before I hit midnight, right? Before we enter into August. And September has a lot in store. So August, have plans to making it to New York in August. In September, I'll be in North Carolina as well as New Orleans. New Orleans, the date for the North Carolina is going to be the first weekend of September, and the 21st of September, I'll be in New Orleans. Right, so I'm doing a lecture in New Orleans, North Carolina. For that, just coming through and seeing some associates and friends, and go to an event that's going on out there in North Carolina. August, I'll be in New York. So more than likely, that will probably be the third weekend or the third week in August. So the third weekend in August, I'll more than likely be in New York. So I'm still working out the, well, hold on, let me see. My bad. The third week in New York. Third week in New York. Third week of August, I'll be in New York. All right. So that's that for now. There's a couple of other places that's on the list. I think Houston is one of them, and a couple of spots. But once that's finalized, I'll let y'all know. That's going to be September, first weekend in September for North Carolina. Third weekend in September is going to be New Orleans, and the third or fourth weekend in August, I'll be in New York, because August has 5. It has 5 weeks. If you count this week, it has 5 weeks. So that's 5 Fridays, 5 Saturdays. All right. So that's just a heads up. So shout out to Ricky Stansberry in the building, Jamila Hawkins, Cheryl McIntosh, Francois, 617, let's get it, Vanessa Satterwhite, and 916 Shan. What's going on, y'all? How y'all doing? All right. So I made a post on Facebook, and it was in regard to the oral tradition, oral history, in regards to ancient Israel. I'm talking about Iron Age Israel, and information that predated Iron Age Israel. There's a lot of things that I'm trying to bring out in regards to showcasing the portions of the text that was oral, and the portions of the text that was written, portion of the text that was redacted, and the different styles that show up in the text, right? So this book right here is extremely crucial to understanding the oral nature. Hold on, let me let y'all see it. It's extremely crucial into understanding the oral nature of ancient Israel. Now, I read a good portion of it, but I did not finish it. I'll be finishing it soon, and as soon as I finish it, I'll be quoting from it, and I'll be sharing some stuff with you. I mean, this book goes into everything. It goes into, archaeology, ancient inscriptions, history. Goes into the text. I mean, it's a very, very heavy text. And those of you who follow me on Facebook, I showed pages from this book for one of the particular sections in here. And that section that's in here is called Oral Substratum, Language Usage and Thematic Flow in the Abraham Yaakov Narrative by Frank H. Pollock. And that's on page 217. And he goes deep, and he's looking at it from the linguistic perspective, right? And he shows some syntactic features and discourse profile in order to showcase why he's proposing that elements of Bereshit is actually derived from oral tradition based on its grammatical structure. All right. And they employed a particular technique here that's called the explicit lexicalized constituent, ELC, or it's an explicit syntactic constituents that are dependent immediately on the predicate, which is the verb, relating to either the subject, direct, indirect objects, modifies insofar as not implicit in prefix, affix, or object possessive suffix. And then he gives an example going into the text here. Then he also goes into subordinate clauses, relative clauses, object, time clauses, etc., indicated by a hyphen, and goes into the number of noun groups within a given constituent, construct, state, noun with objective, attribute, and apposition injunctions, right? So for some people, all of this might sound like chemistry formula, right? But what I'm going to do is once I finish the book, I'm going to highlight particular essays in here that I like, and this is one of them. And we're going to go through each component linguistically, and we're going to show you these features because you can apply the same technique to other areas of the text and determine based on this formula, and that's being put forth by Frank H. Pollock, what can be ascertained as being an oral portion of the text. Now, the reason why this is important is because, like I've been saying in the past and previously, there are people that are extremely religious, dogmatic, however you want to say it, slavish when it comes to the text. And anytime they find anything that's an inconsistency or something like that, they try to find a way to explain it away instead of understanding that this is a compilation of books with different authors under what we would say is divine inspiration. That was then later redacted, right? So you have multiple hands putting the text together. Some sources coming from oral, some coming from straight literary techniques, right? That was employed by scribes, that was laid down later on by redactors in order to try to make some things cohesive. But we have scribal mistakes in the text. We have doublets in the text. You have things that look contradictory. You have sometimes the resh and the dalet, sometimes interposed, etc. So there's a lot of features that you see that's there in the text. You can go into Manuel Tov's work, and he does an excellent breakdown and deconstruction of the text in regards to textual criticism, and he shows you a lot of these things that's blatant there for anybody that can read the text, right? So what I want to do is I want to go through, pick 3 essays that I like the best out of there that pretty much help to exemplify my position and kind of break down the components of it, because this is extremely scholarly written text. It seems like the essays here were written for other scholars. So it may be a little difficult for some laymen to pick up, but for me, I love it. I just dive into it. I'm like, wow, okay. So he went into the subordinate clauses, talking about the relative clauses, the object, time clauses, etc. And he goes in to show you these things, how you have imperfect, perfect, and how they are aligned in certain texts, how your pronominal suffixes and their connection with nouns that are connected to preposition and conjunctions, how looking at these things and repetitive ways of things being said, how all of this is hallmarks of oral tradition finding its way into the text. Now, a good way for you to help to identify other elements that are oral is going and looking at the various songs that you see in the text. For example, the Song of Miriam, right, that we find in the text, that is believed to be purely oral, right? It was something that was sung and something that the elders had remembered and they shared with the younger generations via song, sometimes with dance and instruments, which we see similar in West Africa. And then that was transmitted from person to person to person, generation, etc. So you see a consistency in regards to the song. Songs is one feature of oral tradition. Another feature of oral tradition is the blessings. Like we said, the Aaronic blessing. These blessings and these songs are indicative of oral traditions. Even the prayer, certain prayers that are prayed as well by various characters in the literature, is also believed to have been oral, right? So the narrative is the parts that are really believed to be have been laid down in regards to and when I'm saying the narrative, I'm talking mostly anything after Joshua, right? But the Torah itself, a lot of it comes from oral tradition, hence why we see it the way it is. And when you look into the Wellhausen theory, the documentary hypothesis, and how that is structured, which I've shared plenty of times on this channel, it also helps to explain certain features that we see when we do textual criticism, when we read the language, that is like, wow, why is this there? Why is this like that? And you get to see these things, right? So when I learn the language, right, when I teach myself the language, when I learn it by speaking to other people that I know it, and trying to improve my literacy in regards to language, I'm studying it for these things. Some people are studying just so they can read the text and just say, oh, I can read the text. No, I'm studying it for features like this, because it's features like this that help to fortify your argument. And when you see these scholars writing in this depth in regards to this type of information, it's like, wow, you know, people who want to debate and argue about stuff, it's like they're not even looking at this type of material. And like I said, this is a very challenging book to get through if you are strictly a layman. But if you're somebody that's extremely scholarly in archaeology and linguistics and comparative cultures, etc., this book is an excellent analysis in regards to contextualizing Israel's sacred writings. Now, I got a lot of other books that I'm going to show on here. I'm going to probably show some of my book collection as I go forth. I have way more ebooks than I do physical books. Now I have a library in New York that I have in storage. And then I have a small library here in Atlanta that I need to build back up again because I don't frequent New York as much as I previously did. And there's some other books that I got to reorder so that way I can add to my library here as well. But I'll start showing you some books from my library, and I'll start going into some of it and explaining so you can see the type of books that I read, right? Some of them are like user friendly, right? Easily accessible. You can pick up and read. A layman can get it. But a lot of them is extremely in depth. I love reading articles. I think I like reading articles more than books. Books take time, and it takes commitment, dedication, and loyalty to get through it. You know, when you have a lot of other responsibilities, family, you know, work, ministry and stuff like that, sometimes it's difficult to finish books as much as you'd like to. Certain ones like this is extremely important for me. This book has 375 pages, 374 pages. I went through maybe about almost a half of it, because I'm selective at which essays I want to read. And there's also an ebook version of this, but I had to get this in the physical. I had to get the physical copy of this. But I want you to start seeing these things. So, and the purpose of me sharing with you is not for me to kind of like put information out there that's over your head, but to expose you to information that's out there to help to validate a lot of things that I share on this channel. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, I'm not just sitting here making stuff up and pulling stuff out the air. You know, I'm actually deriving a lot of this information from scholars that have already laid down the groundwork. And what I do is that I take that information and I come forth with my conclusion from that information. And that information even inspires me to bring forth new perspectives on certain things. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it has to be like that in order for you to drive innovation. You know what I'm saying? In regards to, you know, culture. And my objective is to reconstruct and restore culture. Well, restore and reconstruct culture. You know, restore, then reconstruct culture. It can go either way. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I do the studies that I do. That's why I go into the archaeology, because I want to show you things like what I shared about family and household religion in the ancient Levantine or ancient Israel, and show you what's really interesting is the distinction between ancient Israel and Judah as opposed to the other nations around them: Ammon, Edom, Moab, Phoenicia, Syria, you know what I'm saying, or Aramea, and then Mesopotamia. You'll see there's features that, you know, ancient Israel and Judah had, even within the context of dwelling in Canaan. You know, so a lot of people say, oh, the Israelites was Canaanites. Okay, well, even if you put forth that argument, there's a lot of distinct features that they have that no other group around them share. And all those other groups share a lot more things in common than that enclave of individuals that settled in the Central Hill countryside, and from the Central Hill countryside to the Negev desert, you know what I'm saying, in that region as well. So it's extremely interesting information. Like I said, I continue to bring it out. That's why when people want to debate, I guess they think that I'm one-dimensional or two-dimensional. I mean, they're not really abreast on the stuff that I'm studying, the stuff that I'm reading. And when I debate, I look for opportunities to kind of bring these things out. Again, I don't speak to people who are disrespectful, people who throw ad hominems, people who are loud, people that try to drag my name through the mud, people who want to yell, scream, argue, fight. I only dialogue with civil people, right? They know how to have a formal dialogue that knows with diplomacy and tact. Sometimes people I invite on here to have discussions don't have that, but they've never disrespected me, right? So I give them an opportunity to have these type of dialogues, and sometimes people just don't show up, right? But what I'm saying is I look for opportunities to bring this up, to have discussions like this, for the sole purpose of the edification of the audience that's watching, because if people are on the same page of the information that they're exchanging, and then they're able to take that and deduce it to a simplistic format and convey it to the audience, I believe that we can bring our community up to a higher standard, right? The status quo can be raised, the bar can be raised, and that's something that we need to do, because, you know, I just feel the community stagnant. I mean, I have never seen nobody in the community bring this out. I don't even see nobody talking about this, you know what I'm saying, or bringing this information out. Also, I'm very heavy into Igbo culture, extremely heavy into Igbo culture. I love Igbo culture. You know, my DNA goes back to Igbo as well. But what I want to do is start sharing my books, my Igbo books, and going into a lot of that Igbo culture and show you the cross-cultural analysis that I do between the Igbo culture and ancient Israel. And show you why it's important for us to study those cultures in order for you to get a full understanding of the true halakha that was played out during these times, and a lot of the minhagim, or the customs, also that have been preserved in West Africa, right? And those of you who know what my model is in regards to the Semitic migration and fusion into the indigenous populace of West Africa, creating an amalgamated group. And then from there, we get a lot of the peoples that we have today, because there was a lot of migrations in and out. And I have tons of articles on those migrations, right? And those interminglings and so forth. So more of that information I will bring out in the future, slowly but surely. I don't want to overload people with information, right? So I'm gonna take it one step at a time, so that way people can absorb it, and people can really get a taste of you know, the things that I look at, so that way we can pretty much help to restore the community back their culture. I'm telling you, books like this is a game changer. It is a game changer. A lot of people don't even know the social structure in ancient Israel, even pre-exilic Israel, because this book, I'm gonna show you what it says. All right. The social structure of ancient Israel, the institution of the family, the Beit Ab, or the house of the father, a father's house, from the settlement pre-exilic, to the end of the monarchy, right? So this is all pre-exilic established. It's not talking about post-exilic, and that's for a reason. This is why I get material like this. There's a lot of material on pre-exilic Israel, culture, structure, organization, even going to the book that I showed y'all as far as you know, the family and household religion, right? And you see the customs and practices that it did. And I had gotten a comment where somebody had said to me, "Oh, I'm gonna show you guys what I wanted to show you." The last live stream, I didn't get a chance to show you, but I'm gonna show you real quick. But somebody had asked me, well, those family and household cults, religion, practices, whatever, you know, it's all according to Torah. And then I tried to explain to him the final form of Torah that we got today, that's in the Chumash, the first 5 books, was influenced by the development of the culture from the Exodus to the settlement, all the way up into the monarchic period, right? So that it influenced the final written version that we have today, has been redacted, that went through various hands and oral traditions in order to preserve it in the form that we have today. So you have to understand the development of the community and things that was going on, and the imposition of the state, you know what I'm saying? And then after the exile, we call post-exile, the return and the reformation that was done by Nehemiah and Ezra, you know what I'm saying? And what they did that changed the game. And you don't have the northern tribe like that anymore in the land. So a lot of things changed functionally, and a lot of things were imposed. Because when you read the book of Nehemiah, he imposed sanctions on people, right? He changed a lot of things because they had lost the book of their culture, and they have adopted a lot of Babylonian ways. And when they found the book, that's when they started to issue all of these reforms and impose it on people, to the point where it said, hey, if you play around on Sabbath, we're going to put hands on you. So there's tons of material that's been written, and how the culture changed into a religion by the time it got into the hands of Nehemiah and Ezra. This is important, because when you don't know these things, you don't pay attention to these things, then you start to assume that what you have has been there for a long time, and people don't look at the evolution and development of the culture. The templates are consistent, but the application, the halakha of those templates, they change based on the environment. When I read that book by Lester Grab called Ancient Israel, and I shared that with you, he explains that in detail in there. Because if you don't take that approach, you're going to twist the actual text itself and assume that it was all written at one time and give it to people at one time. It's like it had one author written at one time. That's not how it happened. Things developed over time. I'll give you an example of what I mean. Some people will say the sanction to not buy and sell on a Sabbath is not original to Torah. It's not in the Torah. But we see that develop when we see Isaiah or Yeshayahu talk about that. You know what I'm saying? About buying and selling. And then we see more references to it in Jeremiah, and then later on in Nehemiah, Ezra, etc. We start to see these things, but it was not there in Torah. Now, some people would say, well, the oral tradition, and when they say oral tradition, they're referring to the Mishnah and then the Gemara commentary on the Mishnah that's compiled in the Talmud and the later sage writings. Well, that oral tradition goes back during that time, and that was something that they said orally. Well, if it was orally, the question is, does the oral tradition supersede what was laid down, right, which would be the primary source? Or was the oral tradition side by side and the people just assume, okay, we're not going to buy and sell, because then that will probably require some people to do work, right? So the implication is there. But when I showed my research, and I'll probably show more of it, on the scholarly consensus is that that secondary oral tradition, not the initial one that was laid down that helped to fill in the narrative for the Tanakh, but the later one that we get in the form of the Talmud, that originated again from the household traditions when the Israelites came back from captivity. I've showed and cited sources on that. So the scholarly consensus is that that's where that second oral tradition came from, that it does not go back to what some people say is Mount Sinai. You know what I'm saying? Or Sinai. Okay. So let me see what's going on. The people here that's here right now. All right, let's see who joined in. Shout out to Sankofa John, Kimo Ben Israel, Black Av in the building, Isaac Judah. Let me see. Khael Cameras, what's going on? Send your reparations in Africa, Israel. Spend your reparation in Africa, Israel. Okay. John Bertrand, Yoel Ben Israel, Shalom. Khael Camera says, can you explain Yirmiyahu 8:8? Okay, give me a second. Prove all things. Shalom. Yeah, you know, the Most High Child. That's my moderator, Khael. So that's my brother. That's the one I'm gonna go see in North Carolina. Shout out to Mika One in the building, Derek Yasha Al, Akoti Yamai, A. Dolores Williams, Van Monroe, my brother Sean McGee in the building, VV Life Story. Let me see. Okay, I don't. What's going on in the chat? D-Red, what's going on, D-Red? Shout out to Salt Set Apart Living Torah Community, Yehoshua Shamar, Linda Brooks, Christopher Whitfield, Ashan, Eric Elaine Johnson. Thank you for joining in on this late Wednesday, early Thursday. Make sure y'all hit the thumbs up if you're enjoying the information. Shirley Williams, what's going on? All right, so you want me to go into Jeremiah 8:8. Let's go into Jeremiah 8:8. And I don't know what's going on in the chat, but you know, Kyle and Chris, both of you are my brothers, man. So I can't see what's going on, but Kyle, the Most High Child, or Chris, he's the moderator for KHM, this KHM channel. All right, let me see. So all right, so Yirmiyahu 8:8. That is Echa Tomeru Chakanim Ananu Wetorat Yahweh It Tanu Aken Hine La Sekir Asa It Sekir Soperim. And this is, I mean, I think I'm assuming I know what you're going through. This is quoted a lot by GOCC And GOCC quotes this a lot because they say that the scribes had wrote in like the Most High's name into the text, and that Yahweh is a Canaanite deity that is pagan, and they wrote it into the text. And that anytime you see something that looks strange, it's because the scribes went back and wrote it into the text. And this is one of those proof texts that they use to kind of like explain that, right? So to get the understanding of what this is saying, and we breaking it down. So we're gonna look to see, like, for example, the word hakamim, right? So we have the plural there for wise, right? Which is interesting. The chokmah is feminine, singular suffix that we have on them, but here we have it in the plural form, the masculine plural form here. It serves as an adjective, and it says that talking about the law of Yah. Look truly that it's with us. And it's talking about the law of Yah is with us, but it says the scribe works their falsehood, their la seker, la is the preposition to or towards their falsehood or their works. And it says the word pen there, but the word et is being used there. That's the ayin mem of the false pen of the scribe. So pretty much what the text is saying here, and again, I would love to have a dialogue with somebody in GOCC, to kind of like to trying to see why they use proof text like this. And knowing Kyle, I think if I'm wrong, Kyle, let me know. I think that's why you bringing that up. If so, let me know. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, Kyle. Let me know. Kyle said, "Yo, so just so you know, I don't think Kyle's gonna come in here and start any problems. That's my brother that I know outside of social media. So he's cool, peoples, right? If he goes crazy, I'll highlight him. I'm saying off the record, but I don't think he's trying to go crazy. But Kyle, let me know if that's where you're getting at. If you want me to address the doctrinal element of GOCC and or if you want me to parse out that text, I can, and then come back and we can analyze it piece by piece. Let me know. But I'm not sure what you want me to expound on. Do you want me to just exegete the text, or do you want me to expound on it in regards to the doctrine that people use to say that Yahweh was written into the text, etc.? So Derek Yasha'al, so Yahuwah. So back when I first was coming into the truth, I used Yahweh. Then I started to research and I got into Yahuwah. Then I got deeper into the language and I realized that Yahuwah, morphologically speaking, phonologically speaking, if you're going to pronounce it as Yahuwah, you have to add a glottal stop, which doesn't exist in the actual word itself, which would be represented by an aleph that would have to be infixed, and that's not there. And if you look at the rules on the morphology of how certain things are supposed to look and how they're supposed to be spoken, you understand how it's supposed to be written, right? So I realized that, okay, can't use that no more. Yahweh grammatically is correct. Yehovah is also grammatically correct. Because remember the word Adonai, the same nakud that's used to write Adonai, that's removed and that's added to Yod He Wafe, that you get Yehovah. Where you have the difference is the ah, which you have your patach, the ah, and that is supplemented with your shewa, your Yehovah, and they give a similar sound almost, right? So you'll see how that's transposed to see how the actual people that's writing it, they use their Adonai, because the actual pronunciation of Yod He Wafe could have been lost. And Yahweh could have been used as a way to supplement the actual pronunciation. That's why we see Yehovah show up in the text, which is, again, the diacritic marks that's removed from Adonai, with the exception of the ah and the eh, short a from the shewa, and that's imposed onto the Yod He Wafe. So there's a way in which, when you look at the development, again, the development of how these things operate, you get to understand these things. Oh, that's what you're saying. You're saying that Jeremiah is saying that the reform of Josiah was wrong and it is not the original Torah. That's a good question. Now, if you want to bring up Yirmiyahu speaking about Josiah being wrong, give us another reference, Kayal. Give me another reference so I can see what it is you're talking about. Give me another reference, and let me go ahead and address that. Well, I got you. Give me 1 second. So, Kyle, give me another reference to that where you're seeing that he's speaking specifically to the reforms that Josiah was making was wrong. Now, in regards to what I share about the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, we understand that that conglomerate was made possible because of a reform that was pushed and enacted by the southern tribes and Shemuel to try and galvanize the northern tribes to assist them in buffering against the Philistine threat that was towards the coastal plain area, right? So we understand that the prophets, like I had spoken before, that they are raised up as a form of checks and balances against the things that are occurring in regards to the kingship or the monarchy and the Kohanim or the priest. And a lot of times you'll see that the Nevi'im or the prophets will speak against things that they're doing. So even looking at Jeremiah chapter 8:8, we see that there's some form of reproof or correction that's going out against the scribes, right? So in regards to the scribes taking matters into their own hands and writing things, during the time of Josiah, it is known by the consensus of scholarly works that there was huge reforms that was done in the land that was imposed by Josiah on the peoples that was left from the Assyrian siege, which would be your northern tribes, remnant that was still there, and those that was there in Judah. Now, again, when we go into the development of the household model to the national level, once it takes shape and form, now it has the power to reform what's done in the homes and things that was already customary amongst the peoples that they have carried along for generations. I gave an example when I showed y'all the book, Family and Household Religion in Ancient Levant, referring to Judah and Israel. We see that the importance of what they were doing at a small level, there was ancestor veneration that was going on, that they also had votive offerings in the house, food offerings in the house. These are rites that was being performed in the house, okay? And they had like a mobile shrine, tabernacle inside the house that they would move from area to area depending upon what was going on. The birthing quarters would have one. If there was a situation where the child was going from adolescent to adulthood, they would have their rituals performed there for that as well. They would do things within a home to appease the deity that they worship and the ancestors. So when people say ancestor veneration, they're not worshiping the ancestors. They're showing veneration to the ancestors. So that way they could be in good graces and be in alignment with their customary and cultural practices. This is found in both Israel and Judah. But what happens is now when you have kings that, again, was not designated by the creator to be put in place. And when I say creator, I'm talking about within the worldview of the Israelite perspective, which is Yod He Wafe, and then with implication to El Shaddai, which is El Elyon, we see a very interesting phenomenon take place. And the reason why I talk about this phenomenon is because a lot of times when you just pick up the book, you make assumptions based on what the presuppositions that was already taught to you or that you learn. And then you take that and you read that into the text, and you're not allowing the text and the archaeological aspect to speak for itself. Remember, I said the text itself was laid down later. Remember, at that time, we didn't have a full Tanakh, right? There was a proposed Torah that was written, parts of it, because when you go back to the documentary hypothesis and other hypotheses and theories that speak to a lot of those features that we see in the text that seem inconsistent, we see that with the earliest works, which is called your Yahwist and your Elohist, comes very early. And we're talking about 10th, 9th, 8th century. And then later on, you get your other hands that make their way in it, which is called your priestly scribe, which is your P, your JP or your Y, your Yahwist, Elohist. And then you have your Deuteronomist, which is writes much later on. The Devarim is much later on. It's not during the time of the Iron Age period. That happens much later on. And we're talking about either at the close of the monarchy period and or during the time of the reform when Nehemiah and Ezra comes back. All right. So the problem with the community sometimes is that we are so extremely dogmatic that we're quick to outlaw a lot of things that we see in other cultural practices simply because we say that, in totality, it was not practiced in Israel. It was condoned. It was outlawed, etc. But we see these same things being practiced. I'll give you an example. In the home, libation was poured in the house. That book that I showed y'all, it speaks about it there, right? It showed you the formation of the family unit and things that was done in the family before things developed onto a national level. I explained to you before that the northern tribes were egalitarian culture. And egalitarian culture is extremely important because when you're somebody that picks up the text for the first time, you're automatically going to read into it a absolute patriarchal, patrilineal text. And you're reading this into the text. And that is wrong, right? Because we see the text is not absolutely written that way. And again, the text is derived from the development of the culture when it was instituted from the settlement area in the Central Hill countryside to when it started to fan out and then later on become a monarchy that we see that is that's confirmed by the external entities that surround or sister cultures that surrounded ancient Israel at that time. So it is extremely important for us to understand that. So Kyle says, now Kyle, in regards to Jeremiah 8:8 and Isaiah, and you're talking about them speaking against the reform of Josiah, there is some proposals that are made to that, and 3 scholarly works that I would like to use and bring out, not tonight because it's kind of late, but on a weekend when I do a live stream and show you what their angle is and speaking against that. And then there's other, because like I'm giving you an example. I have several books like this, and books like this is a cluster of essays by multiple scholars in the field, right? Top scholars in the field that come together and speak on certain matters. And in regards to Josiah's reform and reforms that occurred by Hezekiah, etc., there is 2 books that I have that has maybe about 20 something essays in total that speaks about those reforms and gives you certain angles in regards to reforms. There's nothing unanimous in regards to it. The consensus is the reform that was done by Josiah was a religious one in order to preserve the integrity of the nation at the time. And that was the role of the Malach. That was his role. He had to ensure that there was peace and harmony amongst the existing peoples that was there. Hence why him being a vassal king and having to choose which empire that I'm going to side with, for the hopes of preserving the people and being able to maintain his status in the region, certain decisions had to be made. Certain people like Josiah and Hezekiah, who came on the scene that was attempting to do what we deemed to be righteous reform, sometimes was imposing certain things on certain people who were innocent to these things, but had to fall in line because it was a trickle-down effect from the monarchy all the way down to the poorest person that was there in the land. So this is a layered thing. This is not just one, it's a layered thing. And there's extensive works that is written on that, and I've shared. Matter of fact, can I pull out a source right now? I probably could pull out a source right now for you to read on that. Hold on. Now he's making me work. That's what Kyle comes to do. So I appreciate his questions. Again, his thing is he's against the dogmas. Well, I understand that, and that's my brother. And at the same time, this is why I try to tell people that when it comes to actually studying this culture, there's a lot more than meets the eye. And if you're not willing to go deeper, you're going to miss a lot of stuff, and it's going to be lost in translation simply because either you can't read the text and it's a tested language, or you're not looking into the archaeological excavations and reading the reports from the excavations, or you're not looking at the essays that's being put out by scholars in the field as it pertains to the subject matter. And again, everybody's not going to probably take time and read all these books, right? And get to learn the language and get to look at all the excavation reports. They're not going to do that. But there are books that are written that has a cluster of these things, and even brings in some sister cultures. Now, also what I want to share with y'all is another lexicon that I like to use, and I'm going to show you why I like to use it, because I showed you the other one for United Bible Societies and their approach, which you can get for free online. Their dictionary is online. You know what I'm saying? It's called a Semantic Dictionary of Biblical Hebrew. The other one is a Dictionary of Classical Hebrew, and that's written by Klein. That right there is another hallmark lexicon that I love to go to, because again, a lot of people like to use the Halat, which is the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament. So people like to go to the Enhanced BDB or the Gesenius, and those 3 are good. But Klein's position, United Bible Societies, they're reforming how lexicons should be structured and how they should be given out to the community. I'll give you an example. In Klein's work, A Dictionary of Classical Hebrew, he also includes inscriptions, Ben Sira, and he also adds the Dead Sea Scroll words that are not found in the biblical text, inscription words and syntax that help you to understand certain elements of the biblical Hebrew that we find in text that is not there in other attested lexicons. So this is a reformation in regards to how you're looking at the text and how it must be a holistic approach in order for you to better exegete or do midrash and get an understanding of what's there. And as you see, once you do these studies, it will remove layers of dogma, layers of dogma, layers of dogma. So you'll start to see all of these doctrines, what people say, that was given to us is unnecessary because the text can speak for itself. And when it's absent, Ugaritic comes in, right? The Dead Sea Scrolls can come in, right? The Iron Age inscriptions can come in, even the Aramaic inscriptions that was written, and not just Aramaic, the things that was written when they were in Elephantine Island. You have a whole corpus of work there that was written in Aramaic. Even some of them was using the Demotic script, okay? And looking at these various things and having it shed light onto the text because you realize that the culture is a holistic culture that developed over time. The template was laid down there, but how it's walked out the halakha is something that, you know, people have to reconstruct. And when you don't give the tools and the template into the hands of the people who attest to it, it's going to be very difficult for them to reform it. So that way they're culturally autonomous and they can implement it within their sphere of influence and being able to enact change, shift, the existing paradigms and be able to supplement it with a new one that's fixing issues in our community. We have to take this approach. KHM wants to be at the leading edge of bringing this data to you guys so you guys can do the most with it. And none of this is designed to undermine our spirituality. It's there to enhance it. But you have to go and look at the culture because the culture dictates your spirituality. And you have to be extremely in a point of self-actualization where you don't have to demonize other people in order for you to assert what your cultural values are. And unfortunately, this is what we have a lot that's going on in our community. But a lot of it can be resolved simply by doing these type of interdisciplinary studies that I encourage everybody to do. Some people say, well, you may get lost on the source. And sometimes people don't want to do the work. They want people to do it for them. You know what I'm saying? And I always give people the sources so they can do it for themselves. So when Kayal's talking about, are you a Yahwist or Elohist? Are you speaking that in the terms of the Wellhausen theory, the documentary hypothesis? Because the Elohists, what we have from the Elohists is influenced by the northern tribes, and the Yahwists, what we have is influenced by the southern tribes. And you see these stylistic differences that's coupled there in the Torah or the Chumash, right? We see it, it's there. So being that the Elohists will be more of traits that are found from the northern tribes, that would side more or be more in alignment with my predisposition, simply because that is the tribe that I identify with, right? Those are the tribes I identify with. Now, the Yahwist element was there because it was the traditions from the south, and the Elohist was the traditions from the north. And then later on, when the monarchy is consuming power, when we see future reforms like the ones he's talking about with Josiah, they're trying to amalgamate all of these things and then parse it out, and then now point at what they believe was the cause for their downfall, instead of looking at the fact that, hey, the reason why y'all fell is because y'all decided to get you a king, and your deity said not to do that. The king was not something that was designed, was an initial design. That's why when we see the stuff taking place in the home, like the book that I showed you, where it says the book of Shemot to Devarim, we see there's a transitionary period, how things was done in the dwellings in a home. And then now it makes its way in Devarim onto a national level where it says that 3 times a year, your men are supposed to appear before me in Jerusalem. We see that shift happen because by the time Devarim is written, the priests now have power and control. And then now they're telling the people the reason why the kingdom fell is because y'all were not doing what we were trying to tell y'all to do. And pretty much what they did was they amalgamated a lot of the customs and they parsed it out, and they utilized the ones that they believe was responsible for helping with the reform of the community, and the other ones, either they were outlawed or they were minimalized, and then they were marginalized out the picture. So that way they can have control so that people can be on one accord. And we see this happen even more when Nehemiah and Ezra come on the scene. So we see the development of that. So the original model without the king was what Yah intended for them to be. But what happens is, because they are unable to commit themselves to the covenant they made with the deity, now they started to have issues. But then we start to see other things that start to happen when you start to see like people like Gideon, who's supposed to be this judge of renown. His name is changed and he has a theophoric name with Baal in it. Now, Baal can also be a verb meaning to rule, to possess, etc. And we see that that is a role of the ish, the man in the home, right? We also see that when I went into the semantic dictionary of biblical Hebrew, going into the United Bible Studies dictionary that we looked at the other day, that also that semantic value is also implied of the ab, or the father. All right. Yeah, you crazy. So let me not get lost in the sauce. Let me give you a reference. But again, let me go back and Kyle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give me those two verses again, Jeremiah 8 and 8. And I think you said something in Isaiah. I'm going to parse that out and I'm going to do another session and we're going to go into it grammatically, historically, culturally, and archaeologically, and try to gather what's going on, what is implied, what's being said. And then for certain of those words, like that word there for scribe, you'll see something very rich when we go into Klein's Dictionary of Classical Hebrew and we go into United Bible Societies and we compare those two with the Halat, right? Or the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament. Now, the enhanced BDB, I still use that, but a lot of that is derived from Gesenius work. But I try to get 2 or 3 witnesses and I try to get the recent ones, which again is UBS's Klein's and the Halot, which all give you a very rich and unique position in how certain words are supposed to be used within a syntactical and semantical positions in the grammar. And you'll see a whole wealth of information. And then the scholarly essays that speak upon these reforms and the role of the Nevi'im during this time period, and that will help us to illuminate more insight in regards to what's taking place. So again, this is a layered thing. Please, nobody take things as an absolute. This is extremely layered, and it's important for us to understand that. All right. So let me not forget what I was going to say. So what I wanted to explain to you guys is when I brought out that element about the practices that was done within the household, where we have votive offerings in a household, we had things that somebody would say, oh, that's idolatry, or that's idolatry. And I'm like, well, you got to understand there's various renditions of that word idolatry. But the issue, and I think that people misconstrue this, the instrument itself, only if you worship the instrument does it become idolatrous. Because if the instrument is representative of an idea, a concept, a promise, right? And I'll give you an example of what I mean. The Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is fashioned with 2 cherubim. Well, the cherubim are things that are supposedly from the Shemayim, or the heavens. Why is that fashioned and put on an ark? And why do they have this in the holiest place in the temple? Why do you have a menorah there in the temple? Now, menorah is kind of abstract, but again, that could be considered an idol as well. The Ark of the Covenant, the mercy seat, right, where Moshe had to go and divine, through divination, speak to the deity who was believed to reside on that seat, where blood was sprinkled on it. This is really interesting. If you've seen people doing this today, you would call them all types of crazy names, right? This is why Christianity tries to demonize that and ostracize that and say the law is done away with. But even those who in Judaism, they don't realize that everything had to be about how the culture was centralized. They were trying to put emphasis on this is how we do divination. We do it by casting lots. Even your forms of libation could be a form of divination, right? You going in and divining and have your Urim and Thummim and using that to divine with the deity. Like all of this is a form of divination, right? Soothsaying, all that stuff that scripture says do not do, the Israelites were doing, because what it was saying is it was outlawing you doing it to other deities. That's what it was talking about. But within the sphere of this deity's territorial reign over the people in the land mass in which it laid claim to, because Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, he had lost prevalence in the realm as being an El in the realm of Canaan, and then used the Israelites to assert himself back into the land and get back into the rightful position, because the worship of the prominent El in that region, because of the Amorites, was lessened, and you had Dagon, Baal, Yam, other deities that's been risen up over what we have called well, it could be El, which is the chief name, but El can also be the name of a particular deity. But you got to realize in that region, wars were always fought. Baal fought his way to prominence. This is why when you go and you read the Tehillim, you'll see that a lot of the epics that we see that was attributed to Yod-Heh-Wahe is not original to Yod-Heh-Wahe. That is also was attributed to Baal when certain classes of Canaanites ruled in that region. And you got to understand, fighting and wars happen all the time, right? When we say people are colonizing it, well, this was done by every major group that was there. If you read the Amarna tablets, he's talking about various wars of various people fighting, and then Akhenaten, he just ignored them because he's building up a martyr. You know what I'm saying? He's not even dealing with them. You feel what I'm saying? He just giving his oblations and pouring his libations and giving his offerings out to a 10, and then now he's reducing the Amon-Ra priest's power and he's putting it back into the hands of the people. I got an excellent book on that I'll bring out next live stream so y'all can see what I'm talking about. But you see all of this in perspective, that Yod-Heh-Wahe had to rescue the Israelites because the covenant that El Shaddai made with them, the land of Canaan with the Amorites, and the Amorites flood. You have the Amuru kingdom, and you see this attested in Egyptian administrative text. There was an Amuru kingdom, or the Amorite kingdom, that ruled and reigned in that region. Matter of fact, when we look at the Hammurabi Code, Hammurabi was an Amorite. And when you read the Hammurabi Code, a lot of that influenced and dictated how certain politics were to be done in that region. Right? We see the same thing when the Assyrians come on the scene, the same things when the Babylonians, Persians come on the scene. So now as the text is being redacted, a lot of these things that was already permeated in the region on the culture of the people now began to become fortified as a stratum of customs and practices and do's and don'ts. What we say is do's and don'ts, but it's really do's and don'ts that people employed, but it was a divine inspiration that brought the people to this understanding and the structure in order for them to worship the deity as a deity expected. But the problem was that over time, the people started to lost this essence of why they were redeemed. This is why when you look at the epics that are spoken of in the text, whenever you have one of these Israelite individuals speak about the greatness of Yod-Heh-Wahe, they always reference back to Mizraim. That is extremely important because without that event, it would be very difficult to have a nationalized, structured form for the people to say, this is our ethnogenic epic, because that ethnogenic epic helps to make you distinguish against all the other peoples there, as well as other customs and stuff like that, like the dietary law we don't see in Iron Age Israelite sites. There's no pig bones that are there because, you know, that was something that was detested by those peoples, and that was something that we find more in Phoenicia, or the place where the Philistines lived on a coastal plains. And then we see other things that was, you know, regarded of not being kosher as well, that practice that they simply did not do. You know, and when you read that book, you'll see that there are certain practices the Israelites don't do in the Iron Age period, in situ of the excavational findings that we find in archaeology that we see in other sites. And this is because those customs and those practices influence the final form of the text that we have today. But traditionally speaking, we can antiquate the text by looking at the oral element of it and also looking at its shared content with Ugaritic text. This is why Ugaritic helps to shed a lot of light on that text. Again, this might be a lot of information for some people, I know, and it may be a little heavy for other people. I understand that. But again, when you put everything in right perspective, it removes the dogma away. And what it does is that it brings you back to the egalitarian nature of the text and what the text was trying to institute before reform started taking place over time. And when we get back to that primary essence that was being conveyed by the text that the deity inspired through the writers to lay down, and because they were not in a vacuum, they were also influenced by external factors. When we parse through it, we can get a template that when we remove it from out of the context of that past and place it within the context of contemporary times, we can fix problems. We can become culturally autonomous through research and application in our communities once again. This is something that we lost. But a lot of times when people go through this process, they try to skip other things. They try to microwave things. They try to mush everything together. And then they realize why they become lost in the sauce. And you see why there's so much division. Because I say, look, I put emphasis on culture before prophecy. Because if you don't understand culture, prophecy is not going to make any sense. You're going to be thinking about it in modern terms, in contemporary terms. But let me show you something that's very interesting. I'm going to show you something that goes in alignment because people ask. They're like, yo, is this stuff that you read in Divine? Is this stuff, scriptural? Is this stuff biblical? Is this Torah? They have genuine concerns, right? And I say it's genuine concerns because they're like, okay, I don't want to be doing stuff that is against what the model is that I follow. And I feel you. I understand that. So what I try to do is show you how this research is in alignment with what the text is already conveying. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, right? Remember that book I showed y'all? It's called Family and Household Religion in Ancient Levant, and is referring to what was going on during that time period with the emphasis on Israel and Judah, and the emphasis what was being done in the household. Let me show you something that's very interesting, because a lot of the things that you see in Bereshit are culturally driven, that was being done and performed, because what we have in what's called the statute, laws, and commandments, that form of it was slightly different than the form that Abraham was practicing. Because Most High said that Abraham kept the statute, laws, and commandments. He was doing something. There was something that was driving, some custom, some form of things that he was doing that was encapsulated. And then when you go and you read the Levitical law, you'll see, or people say the Levitical law, I call it the cultural mandates in the literature. You'll see when you go back and look at that prior culture, how they derived a lot of the things that they did after the Exodus. It's extremely mind-blowing. But looking back at something, I'm going to show you something very, very interesting, very key, that was done, that was not outlawed by Yah, but Yah allowed it. And the reason why is because it was something that was being done in the home. Watch this. Let me show you something. And Kyle, you can just message me those two scriptures so I can go into it. And I'll bring out the scholarly works on the desire reform, and it reference some of those scriptures as well, and show you the pro and the cons, and show you the protagonist and antagonist positions in regards to that. It's an extremely interesting study. But let me show you something real quick before I mess around with Jeremiah 8:8. Let me show you something real quick. Hold on. Okay. Let me get something real quick for y'all. All right. So I'm going to read Hosea chapter 3, 3:4, and then I'm going to jump into Bereshit. But let me go here first. Actually, let me go to Genesis, or Bereshit 31:19 first. Let's go there. So Genesis 31:19 says, "Now while Laban was out shearing his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household idols." Right? Now it's extremely interesting how this word teraphim is translated as household idol. That is how you know that it has a Western Judeo-Christian perspective on what and how that's determined. And this is why I say, when you go and look at more modern lexicons and how they're using more data before they give you the semantic value of a particular lexeme, you'll understand that a lot of those translations are bad because they are influenced by Judeo-Christian translators, okay? Those translators are not 100% objective, and sometimes their understanding of something from the East is based on their Western interpretation of it. But that term there was labeled as household idols to demonize a particular practice that's not a practice that was not abnormal. Right? It was something that was done or performed in a house, and we got the archaeological data that coincides with that. So Bereshit 31:19 is extremely important. It goes where Laban, where it says, and Laban, halach, he had walked, or he walked, ligzos, it, so now, what tignob, Rachel, it, hat teraphim. That's what we're looking at right there. Hat teraphim, the teraphim, plural, asher le'abiha, right? So to her father, we have the inseparable preposition lamed there, to her father, abi, which means her father, but we got the feminine suffix there, third person, which means to her father, or it's translated unto her father. But it's interesting, but that word there is teraphim. It has nothing, when you translate it as idolatry, which is translated in one reference, or household idol, you come into an issue because you are demonizing a family traditional practice that was customary in the home. And what happened was, when that particular practice that was sacred in the home and that was performed the way it was intended to be performed, Now we have a situation where you take it on a national level and start to outlaw these things, because now the people who are driven away by the corrupt priesthood and the corrupt kings are now doing the wrong thing with a family custom, practice, or tradition. The item itself does not constitute idolatry. It is the worship of that item which constitutes idolatry. And if that item is representative of a covenant with you and another deity, now it becomes an idolatrous practice. But if it's used to represent something within the family, and some of these things were used to represent events of the family, some of them were votive offerings, some of them were promises in a covenantal promise. Again, this is what the Ark of the Covenant was. It was a covenantal promise, because the book of the law was placed on the side, and inside was the tablets of stone. It was a covenantal promise. People had representatives of a small ark type thing within their homes. And it was something that was customary, and it was not outlawed by Torah, right? The template was there, but what happens is when you put it into the wrong hands that's trying to galvanize power, now the wrong thing is being done with it. And it's the kings and the corrupt priesthood that took these family cultic practices and did the wrong thing with it. And hence why Yah had to judge the people because of that, as a collective, as we see with Achan in the book of Joshua. Because one person did the wrong thing, now everybody has to suffer until you give up that body. Now, we talk about sacrifice, human sacrifice. People say, oh, there's no human sacrifice. Human sacrifice is there. I showcased where Zabak was also utilized in regards to the book of Ezekiel, right? Talking about Yah is going to make a sacrifice for the enemies of Israel and give that sacrifice unto the birds and the beasts of the field to eat and consume, right? Which is ironic, because it's normally the human that sacrificing an animal, giving an animal unto the deity, but now the deity sacrificing the animals, the people, and giving the people as a sacrifice unto the animals. But it's something very interesting that we can touch on when it comes to human sacrifice. But before I go there, I'm trying to show you that this kind of thing. Now, when you go into the BDB, but let me get this same word here. Let me see if I get the same word here in the UBS. All right, so we can see what the UBS's position is on this. Okay. Let's go to TIT, and let's get Teraphim. Hopefully it's here. So I'm looking at the Semantic Dictionary of Biblical Hebrew, and we're looking up the word Teraphim. And I want you guys to see this because, and I know you're probably asking a lot of questions right now. I know you're asking a lot of questions. Yes, Sean, 916 Sean. But look, let me show you something interesting in regards to that. All right. Hold on one second. This was in, where did I grab this from? I got it. I want to show you something real quick. I'm gonna touch on what I was saying in regards to the what just happened. Why is this not working? Okay. Hold on. What's going on with this right now? All right. Hold on. I don't know why this is not loading up. Hold on. Maybe I have it downloaded already, so I have to pull it. My bad, family. I'm having some issues with my cloud storage. I can't find the article. It might be on my phone, but my phone is charging right. Oh, I got it. All right. Never mind. I got it. Hold on real quick. I think this is it. All right. So I'm gonna pull up two scriptures, but I'm gonna finish with the teraphim. Let me get what I was sharing the other day from Family and Household Religion in Ancient Israel. And I want to show y'all these. I went to the summary to save some time. And we're gonna get into, here it is. All right. So this is page 479 in the book called Family and Household Religion, right, in ancient Levant. And it says, based on the cultic apparatuses found in the domestic structures, we can conclude that the predominant ritual actions were libation rites with stands and zoomorphic vessels, dry offerings in the stand bowls, the burning of aromatic compounds, as well as votive practices and other ritual actions with human and animal figurines. The ritual apparatuses suggest that daily offerings and gifts were given to deities and ancestors, the latter of which may have been represented by the human figurines. The human representations, predominantly the JPS and the Iron Age 2C, are not divine representations, given their lack of divine emblems, but more probably likenesses of humans expressing human needs and wishes, such as fertility, keep that in mind, plentiful progeny, ample lactation for the mother, etc. They were generally multi-purpose objects used in various contexts, domestic residences, temples, graves, especially for votive practices. We define votive practices as a use of the figurine as an ex voto, both to give thanks for a benefit from the Elohim and to give the Elohim in exchange for benefit. They also served as media for prayer by representing the petitioner, and for magical rites such as love charms, apotropaic rituals, and unambiguous divine figures carrying divine emblems used in domestic cult activities have not been found in Iron Age Israel. Listen to that, because they did not. So the teraphim that they used, which we see that Rachel used, she took one from out of her father's household. And the reason why is because when we go back and look at the archaeology, we see that these things are representative of many different things. Now, what was this teraphim that she had? And again, that's masculine plural. And the singular form is not found there in the text, but we know what it is by learning the rules of Hebrew. But the interesting thing is that what was this teraphim that she took with her? And why was it so important that she had to take it and hide it to bring it with her? What did it represent? Well, it could have represented any of these things. It could have been used for fertility, right? Because now he's going to get this woman, this Rachel, and have children. So it could have represented fertility. It could have represented plentiful progeny. It could have represented ample lactation for her to breastfeed, right? It could have been representative of some kind of benefit that the deity promised her. And in that region where Laban is at, again, that is the realm of El. That's where El resides, or El Shaddai resides. And it's interesting that the cultural practice was to get these people from close-knit family clans. Okay, so when you read this stuff, what I'm saying here, and we see that she took it, she was never ostracized for it. She was never penalized for it. Now the father was looking for it. She didn't give it up. She acted like she was on her period, right, and sat on it, but she took it with her because it was extremely important. But the problem was, when you look to see how it's interpreted here, it's demonized by called a household idol. It is not an idol. When you understand the culture, it was not an idol. And I'm not telling people to go tomorrow and get a whole bunch of teraphim and set them up in the house, because a lot of y'all don't even know how to do it right. But when you read books like this, it explains to you by looking at the archaeology of things from excavation sites left the way the owner had it before they deceased, abandoned the house, whatever the case may be. We see it in situ. That means we see it in its original position, and we're able to determine what it was used for. Sometimes assumptions have to be made, right? Because we cannot fully recreate what occurred, at that time in its precise format. But the objective is to try and reconstruct it as much as possible. But you see that teraphim was a part of household daily activities. But what we see that's distinct for the Israelites, that it was no teraphim that they created that was in the likeness of a divine image, because that was what made that culture distinct from the neighboring cultures when we read the book and we read essays similar to this book. So we see that this is what influenced later on the national application of a household practice. And when you go back to Bereshit, before we have the national thing on the scene, we see how it's performed. But now you start to see that people start to do certain things that they shouldn't do. Now, when we go to the book of Judges, we see that something is spoken about in regards to the teraphim. Let's go into the book of Judges, Judges chapter 17. And you got to read this within its context to see how this is being broken down, because if you don't understand this, you'll also misinterpret it, right? Now, this says, now there was a man from the hill country of Ephraim whose name was Micah, right? Or Micah. He said to his mother, the 1,100 pieces of silver which were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse in my hearing, behold, the silver is with me. I took it. And she said, blessed be my son by Yah. He then returned the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother. And his mother said, I wholly dedicate the silver from my hand to Yah for my son to make a graven image and a molten image. Now, therefore, I will return them unto you. So we got the word graven image and that word molten image that's being read there. That word graven image there, or it would say like a carved image. It's going to be your peh, your semek, and your lamed, right? Your pesel. So your pesel would be what they say is an carved image, but they translate it as being a graven image, right? Meaning that it could represent something that was not intended to be represented according to what we get from what we call the 10 Commandments, right? So that's extremely interesting that two of those words are used there, and it's not the same word teraphim that's used for that. Now, when we go to the word molden image, we got the word makseka, right? So we got the word maseka, right? So maseka is your word for a libation or a molten metal or image. Now, again, these are two different words from whence we get teraphim. But let's keep reading. That's verse 3. That's verse 3. Let's keep reading. So it says, so when he returned the silver to his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave them to a silversmith who made them into a graven image and a molten image, and they were in the house of Micah. And the man Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod and teraphim and consecrated one of his sons that he may become his priest. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own sight. So now what they're doing is they're dismissing this practice off because they said there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his sight, which means that there's heavy influence of Judah, or a priest that sided with Judah that's writing this in there as if the king was going to bring some ultimate righteousness in the land, which they do exemplify David for, even though Solomon and Saul, they had their own take on what they were doing. And then you had righteous kings and wicked kings, which is neither here nor there. But the point is, it said that he consecrated his son that he might become a priest. And it says, now there was a young man from Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite. So now here's the issue. According to the establishment of the Levitical priests, or the Kohanim, there were certain rites that had to be done with them sanctioned over. And you'll see the same thing. Like if you go to West African culture, you'll see that there's some things that you just can't do on your own without a Babalawo, right? There's some things you just can't do on your own without priests. But sometimes people take matters in their own hands to do things because either they can't get a priest, they can't find a priest, or they just want to do what they want to do. So there were certain things that had to be done in order for you to get what's called the blessings, for something to be sanctioned, to be righteous, right? But let's keep reading, which is interesting. It says, then the men departed from the city from Bethlehem and Judah to stay wherever he might find a place, because this is why hospitality was something that was of utmost importance. Because if the Levites, listen to this, if the Levites are the ones that are the final redactors of the text, they're going to put emphasis on hospitality because they don't have an inheritance. Therefore, wherever they go, an Israelite has to take care of them. All right, hold on one second. Hold on one second, family. I'll be right back with you. All right. My apologies. I'm gonna stay on for about another 15 minutes, but I'm trying to get through everything that I was bringing to mind. But let me bring this out, right? Micah said to him, "Where do you come from?" And again, remember I said the reason why hospitality was pushed heavily that we see in the text is because if the Levites are responsible for the redaction, they want to make sure there's emphasis on hospitality because they need to make sure that the people are going to take care of them no matter where they went. Okay, this is extremely, extremely important, right? It says, Micah said to him, "Where do you come from?" And he said to him, "I'm a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I'm going to stay wherever I may find a place." Micah said to him, "Dwell with me and be a father and a priest to me, and I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year, a suit of clothes, and your maintenance." So the Levite went in. Now that was not supposed to be done because the Levites were taken care of, the tithes that was brought into the storehouse. So for that man to say, "Be a priest unto me," why am I being a priest unto you? That is not protocol. So he's going outside the protocol. And so the Levi agreed to live with the man, and young man became to him like one of his sons. So Micah consecrated the priest, or the Levite, and the young man became his priest and lived in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, "Now I know Yah will prosper me, seeing that I have a Levite priest." And then we go into, going forward into the Danites taking Micah's idols. They say idols, right? But it's the teraphim and the ephod that they had taken from the house. But when you understand what I just read in Judges chapter 17, it will start to make sense there in Judges 18. But what happens is certain things that were just being done was just customary in the land. It was nothing that was punishable by death. It was just things that people did customary. But now people did the wrong thing with these items. They did the wrong thing and they went about protocol the wrong way. And because of such, there became tragedies and other things that was happening. Because remember, at this point, there was no king, right? So a lot of things was based on what it said the people did was right in their own eyes because there was no king. Again, giving justification for why a king was needed, even though there was kings that was considered wicked and they were responsible for bringing Israel into captivity. You see how that works? It's very interesting when you see the layers in the text. All right. So I just wanted to point that out to show y'all that that's important. But let me not forget what I want to get in 1 Kings chapter 13, verse 2. I'm going to get to that real quick, but I just wanted to speak to that because some people would say, "Oh, that's wrong." And I'm saying, well, teraphims was used. The ephod was used by the priest. The priest was doing divination. People was casting lots. We see that in Mishle in the Proverbs where people cast a lot on the lap, and that helps us, stop striving between brothers. People pouring libations all over the place, pouring libations. This was customary. None of this stuff was evil, wicked. This was something that people did. And it's only today when you're told it's evil and wicked. You're told not to do that. But a lot of people don't know the history as to why those practices was outlawed. They don't know the history of that. A lot of them don't know the history of that. All of that was political. All of that had to do with the elite at the time trying to control certain things. A lot of people don't know about that because they're not trying to study for that, right? And that's fine. But let me continue to go forward, all right? So I want to show something that's very interesting, okay? You got to understand that a lot of times these vessels that they created did not have a definitive form, okay? Meaning that if you was to see it, it would be like abstractly representative of a bird or cattle or something like that. It did not have definition because the people's superstition that they would worship it if it had details was predicated on what was the cultural mandate at the time, which was not to make graven images. But as you can see, there's different words for that, and they have different implications. It's deep because a lot of times people, they're only looking at it from the surface and they're making assumptions based on the presuppositions that was fed to them by whoever's teaching them. Okay, so we see this a lot in the book of Judges, but let's look at this, right? Let's look at this. I want to show you something that's very, very interesting in regards to teraphim, because when people started to do was devote teraphim to other deities, and they started to worship these deities through the vessel that they created. But the people who were doing righteously in the home for customary practices day to day, they kept these items because people keep items in their house all day for sentimental value. Why are you keeping something that your deceased grandmother gave you? Isn't that an idol? You would say, "Oh, no, it's not an idol. I keep this watch because my grandfather gave it to me, and it was in the family for generations." Well, that's not an idol. You don't think that that's an idol? You're worshiping your grandfather, right? No, I'm not worshiping him by having this family generational thing handed down to me. It's representative of something of sentimental value. And their culture, which is not American culture, they did the same thing with these items. And there were certain protocols that they had to follow to ensure they did not worship them. But we get all dogmatic and scary, and then this is why we've been detached from our culture. This is why when we look at West African culture, which people who say that the Israelites come from, you demonize everything when you don't realize that the Israelite archetype had the same thing. Hence why we could do a cross-cultural analysis between the two. If you're going to look for a derivation of something. Okay. And you don't trace those pieces, right? Because you see that as wicked, evil, and outlaw, but you don't trace these things back from when you whack through West Africa all the way to Israel. You're not tracing these things. And these things were also indigenous in the region as well before the Semitic infusion. So these are things that we have to understand. And again, when you have that mindset, and I don't like to throw shade on the southern tribes. The Most High did that in the book of Ezekiel, where he says that Judah was more wicked than Samaria and even Sodom. This is what the Most High said in the book of Ezekiel. But the point I'm trying to make is that when you have that mindset, like, all right, we better than everybody else, and all of that stuff is evil, wicked. Now you have the mindset of the reform of the people who tried to control the leaders that try to control the people. Now you have that mindset, and you start to demonize everything and parse this out, parse that out, and say, this is wicked, don't do this. And then now what you're doing is you're detaching the people from the indigenous egalitarian culture. And you wonder why you have no more power, because you've taken away all the customs of your forefathers. And a lot of the halakha, how they walked out the template of Torah, has been lost, because a lot of times you're looking at it from the modern perspective. So therefore, you're going to have certain, flags raised. Oh my God, what do you talk about? They had teraphim in the house, but yet you have items of sentimental value in your house right now that have nothing to do with your culture. Why is it there? Some of y'all got pictures of your family members in the house. That's a graven image. Some of y'all got pictures of your dog. That's an animal in the earth. Some of y'all got parakeets and canaries and birds and have images and pictures of them. I've seen it on Facebook. Israelites, you have pictures of dogs on Facebook, pictures in your house, pictures on. What are y'all doing with all these graven images? Oh, but you're saying it's not wrong because it just reminds you. Oh, okay. But when I talk about this is wrong. Okay. Hopefully y'all getting this, man. I mean, like I said, a lot of people, man, if y'all not taking your time to get this, it's gonna really slow you down in the process of just getting deep. And like I said, there's certain protocols that will follow. But let me bring this up, right? Obama pictures. Yeah, I seen that in churches. I seen people got pictures of their pastor up in the church. Oh no, that was the founder of the church. Why you guys picture up there? Is that not a graven image? Oh, it's not a graven image. We don't worship it. Oh, so in the church, you can keep your pastor up there, or the pastor that started the church. But the moment I put teraphim up in the house that has no definitive features on it, that is abstractly representative of something that my forefathers did to remind me of them, the righteous ones, right? You're saying that that's something wrong, but yet you get to keep a ring or a car, that's from the 60s that was handed down in the family. Why are you keeping that? That has nothing to do with your culture at all. You're keeping a lucky bat. You went to a baseball game and somebody threw the ball and you went and caught the ball. Now you're keeping the ball, put it in a glass cube and putting it up somewhere. What is that for? Y'all go ahead and go to sporting events and you'll win trophies and put those trophies up in your house. What are you doing with those? What are those trophies doing there? Why you got trophies with images on the trophies? I've seen this in pictures with Israelites. I know I got awards over the years for various things, even recently. And I keep those awards. I'm not superstitious. Oh my God. Because I understand culturally, these are things that are handed down, that are given to you. When you look at the Ikenga, what is called the statue, some people say, oh, they worship the Ikenga. No, they didn't. That was representative of fortune. That was representative of success. The right hand, which represents power. And the Israelite thought represented the Ikenga imagery that they had formulated, carved images they have formulated. They were not worshiping these things. These things represented something. And it was a reminder of something, that the men were responsible for the success of the community. They had to get in their rightful places, and they utilized this item to remind them of the success they need to encounter, that they need to bring forth. These teraphim did the same thing. Okay. All right. Some people are going to be like, oh, Divine, you bugging out. What is you talking about? If anybody would love to have a discussion, let me know. I set it up. We can sit here and talk on it. I'm going to show you the differences. I'm going to show you things that you probably are not aware of. And again, I'm trying to keep it simplistic because I know a lot of people out there, they may take some time to try and figure out what's going on. But what I'm saying is, it's all in how things are appropriated. And if you misappropriate certain things, then it becomes wrong. But when you understand it in its rightful context, it is not wrong. And it's scripturally based. This is why the people were doing it. You can't say everybody. And so if I show you this, and predominantly in most households in Judah, right, where the righteous ones are supposed to be at, are you going to say that all those houses that they finding this stuff in, all those people were evil and wicked? You're saying everybody went astray? There was no righteous people at all? So everybody's doing something similar in all their households, and everybody's just wicked and evil, and they just going to hell. No. Let's understand the context of how this thing is situated and set up. It's extremely important. But let's go to 1 Kings chapter 13, verse 2. I'm going to end off on this. If y'all have any quick questions, let me know. I didn't see the chat for a while, so I don't know if y'all been asking questions or whatnot. But just let me know if you have any quick questions. Let me get through this first, and then y'all can read out your questions. But again, hit the thumbs up if you're enjoying what you're seeing. Subscribe if you're new to this channel. Like I said, there's a lot of content on here that I know you will enjoy. All the other information of supporting KHM is there in the description. All right. Again, this is just our last check-in since the month of July has ended and we're transitioning to August. And I just wanted to do this quick live stream. I didn't even intend to go this deep in it, but there's certain people in the chat that when they say certain things, they give comments, ask questions, and inspires me to go deeper. So I go deeper. So again, and I'm not telling people to go and do these things because a lot of people, if they just do this, they won't do it properly. And it takes a very careful survey of the text and archaeology to harmonize the two to see what's the best application. And I can do lessons on how to appropriately establish these things, but I don't know if the community is ready for a lot of this stuff. So a lot of times I don't share certain things. I keep things at a surface level, and at times I go deep, right? But I try to ease people into real culture that dictated spirituality. So somebody in here asks me, is the text about spirituality or is the text about culture? The text initially was about culture, because a culture dictates your spirituality. But when you put in the hands of leaders that want power, they spiritualize everything and they demonize culture. There's a reversal that takes place. And you're removed from your power so they can stay in power. That's another discussion. Okay. Dorf L, you are just really persistent with that book of the generations of Adam. I may get into it one day. I personally don't care for it. I've read it. I don't care for it. But if you're interested in it, maybe we can have that discussion. Maybe you want to jump on a live and we can talk about that together. But that's neither here nor there. All right. All right. So within the temple were characters of the heavenly realm, such as the cherubim on ark and curtains. Yes. Eleazar, you're speaking the truth. Because when the Most High told Moshe to come up to the mountaintop, right, where his countenance changed, because it was believed that the deities resided on the mountain, or there was a portal where you can access the deities. This is why the higher the mountain, the more divine you are, right? But anyway, he was told to create something from the image in which he saw. So he's seeing an image from Shemayim, and he's creating that in the earth. Is that not against Torah? Torah says don't make any graven images. Or is it that we are not properly interpreting what that text is saying because we have not done the interdisciplinary studies to better ascertain how to appropriate this information that we're coming across? Maybe that's what it is. But too much religious thinking will confine you from these things. And you wonder why sometimes you can't get further in your spiritualities because you don't have more elements or components of your culture there. And again, I'm not prescribing this for everybody. I'm saying if you learn it over time and you can appropriate it so that way it's in alignment with the template of Torah, it will bring better results to your life. And your spirituality will be enhanced because you will be back in alignment with Yah the same way your ancestors was. You can't demonize all of archaeology, but then use it to verify the people who the archaeology represents. So I bring out information on archaeology and I share people say, oh, people are just, you don't gotta, you don't need all of that. But then again, debate with somebody from Kemet and they bringing up the Moabite Stela. They're bringing up the Tel Dan Stela. They're bringing up the Assyrian reliefs of Shalmaneser. They're bringing up the Babylonian Chronicles. You're bringing all this other stuff up when you want it for your convenience. But the moment that I use it to exemplify details and information, give you insight into the ancestors who left this behind for you to have a record of this information to know how to apply it. It's like we've been so cut off from that information. We've been very spooked out here in America. And when you are less spooked out, you're able to accept things the way it is. That the Torah is a compilation of things. I don't see it as being inerrant because we don't have the original autographs. What was originally handed down, that is inerrant. But people say, oh, we got a very small margin of error. Even with that, we're still proposing that. That is still something that's being proposed. So I just want people to just take their time and digest this information. And what I'll do is I'll go over it piece by piece. And in past before, I was going over all the statute laws commandments. And by the way, 613, I mean, people use that to, oh, 613 statute laws commandments. That is a later iteration of understanding what was laid out. You saying 613, where'd you get that number? Did you get that number by doing it, or did you get it from okay, so you got it from a third party. People don't even know where this stuff comes from. They don't even know the value of 613 or anything like that. But that's fine. You can learn it. Unlearn what you know to learn what's intended for you to know. Because a lot of this information will change your life. Really? It's called the day bed, bro, but whatever. You crazy. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about, all right? All right, so what I want people to take away from this, and I'm going to get to 1 Kings chapter 13, verse 2. Make sure y'all don't let me forget that, all right? I'm going to pull it up right now so I don't forget it. Let me just wrap up this part what I was talking about. What I want to do, if y'all are interested, hit the thumbs up or hit one. Hit one if you want me to show you over time how these practices is an extension of the template of Torah, which we call halakha, and or custom of the minhag, the custom that was implemented by the ancestors that brought them success, that brought them drive, that enhanced their spirituality. If you want me to survey and parse it out and go through each component with you to show you guys how to restore it today and do it in the appropriate fashion to your results, let me know. Like I did a video on casting lots and libations. Most people ain't doing that. I do it here and there, but most people are not doing libations and casting lots. Who's doing that? But the people that know how to do it appropriately, that I have consulted with, they can attest that it has brought them results. They can attest it. So again, these are customary things that were not outlawed by the text. It's there. And he's even encouraged by the text. But we're gonna step back. All right. So if y'all want me to do that, hit one, and I'll do that for y'all. If you want me to go over the statute laws and commandments and show you what's the appropriate halakha today in our contemporary form, not deriving everything from the Talmud, but from our form where we at today. What is the appropriate halakha from my studies and from KHM's reconstruction, which is still a work in progress? Hit one if y'all want that work and I can bring it out. All right. Dorf L, I love the mechanical translation of Torah by Jeff Brenner, but if you learn the language, you can create your own mechanical translation, right? So his is a good reference, but once you learn the language, you could do an even better one, which is just a literal translation, right? But if y'all would like to see that, let me know, because I don't see nobody doing that here. In our community, I feel like, that it's something that we need to investigate again. We need to restore if we're going to get cultural autonomy, because otherwise what we follow today, its rules have been dictated by another religious body, and we're just falling in line with it because we're not able to challenge it, because we're not doing the study. The reason why I get into academia, scholarly work, stuff like that, is to get an objective perspective on the culture that was left behind that we are supposed to absorb today. And then looking how it's practiced appropriately and knowing how to parse out the things that include it and don't include it, from the West African peoples that have the time capsule of those cultures today and pulling it from the Israelite template through the West African lens where they're still doing it the way it was being done back then and applying it today in a format where it's taken into account our issues. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. When we go into the dietary law and Vayikra, and we see it talk about birds, is objectival nouns, meaning that it's a template. And from my position, I believe that the birds of prey, scavenger birds, and or other birds, right? The ones that have, you know, two stomachs, or is really a pseudo stomach, which is a gizzard and then a stomach, or whatever case may be. I went over that in a previous video. But that template, I believe, was original, meaning that they looked at attributes from these animals and they did it that way. So that means no matter where they're at, because you get different birds all the way to the north of the ancient land of Israel to the Negev area. There's similar birds that are flying out, but then some areas there's different birds there. How do you know which birds to eat and which birds not to eat? When it comes to the livestock, because of pastoralism, these animals are moving in and out the region, but the birds who are going into the skies, and some of them don't even fly, but they're just regular residents in the dwelling places of where people are at. How do you know which ones to eat, which ones not to eat? So if you're not doing livestock today, the text also, it may give you a name of an animal, but it gives you the attribute to look for. And it's with that attribute that you examine within your present cultural and matrix of where you're living at. And you can apply that as a template. Look for the adjectival nouns as the template to know what you need to keep in the diet, what you need to kick out the diet, and to look at the conceptual proof of concept. Proof of concept is the actual piloting of a thing that comes from the blueprint, from the conception stage before you get to the pilot stage. And from the pilot stage, what you need to do before you go full on into a diet, you may see that there's certain foods that may not be healthy for you because information has increased, right? And the knowledge that we have today, where some people are now vegetarians or vegans or pescatarians or whatever, it's the template that you utilize in its conception. The original conception being the herbs of the field being food for you. And then after the flood, now the animals you can now eat to give you rest from toiling the earth all the time, you know, to do agriculture. Okay. So again, it's this type of information. Is chicken clean? Yes, chicken is clean. And you know how I know that, besides me giving you a long dissertation into the text and doing exegesis and me simply by looking at the archaeology, the places where the priests were at, chickens were used both for sacrifices and for food, where the priests were at. And I showed that article on here months ago. I could bring it back up another time, but chicken is clean. Now, the best chicken to get is obviously going to be chicken that's free range, right? That has no antibiotics, that has no growth hormones plugged into them. But today, unfortunately, a lot of our food have those things. So you got to make a decision. Are we going to still eat it or not? And if we do, or can we do other things to detox and stuff like that? So you got to be able to regulate your body so that way it is not impeded, where you cannot have clear insight to the things of Yah. But the only way you could do that is if you develop your culture from the template of Torah and implement halakha in your current environment, but using the best practices on how to establish that. See, a lot of times when I talk, I try not to use terms, words, idioms, or whatever that people may not be familiar with. So a lot of times you may see I do a lot of overthinking while I'm speaking because I don't want to say too much and then people don't get it. And then it misses its purpose. So sometimes I got to scale back. But but the point I'm trying to make is that until we start challenging the status quo, we cannot grow as a people. We cannot grow as a people. Our spirituality has been capped off. You know why? Because we don't have cultural autonomy no more in our communities. We don't have that. So everything that we do, we practice and believe comes from an entity that preceded us that laid down what we should do. You know, people say, oh, I believe in sola scriptura. That's impossible to be sola scriptura because there's parts of the text that don't tell you how to do certain things. It don't tell you how to do certain things. It may tell you what something is. It don't tell you how to perform it. So how do you know you're doing it correctly? You have to be doing some form of halakha and don't even realize it. How do you appropriate the halakha to know it's in alignment with what the text is saying? You need another witness. That's why I get into archaeology. Shout out to Valley and Building. I'm glad you enjoy it. I'm glad you enjoy it. Thank you so much for taking time to watch this. Thank you, Dara Yahoo, Ben Dora. Don't want me to forget it. Thank you. Thank you for joining in. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the thumbs up. Please share this video. Again, if you like this video, go back and look at all our other videos from the past 5 years. We have so much content, over 200 plus videos of content on various subject matters, you know what I'm saying, that I know you will enjoy. All right. So an example of halakha that utilized today, Sean, I mentioned it earlier, is in regards to the adjectival nouns as it pertains to certain animals, right? So certain animals we're told not to eat because there's a reason why. A lot of times what I tell people is a lot of the animals that we're told, like the creeping things, the pig and all of that swine, we're told not to eat. It's because they have a particular role in the ecology of the environment. Once you disturb the ecology in the environment, like over grazing the land, right? Resowing into the land, which you need to let it rest after a period of time. If y'all have gardens, y'all need to follow the law of Jubilee. Let the land rest. See, we're not even thinking like that. When you start your garden, you count 7 years, all the way up to 49, 50 years, you implement Jubilee. Because if you don't think you'll get Yah's blessings on it because you're going against Torah. If you have a garden and you're going to bring in the crops for yourself, for your family, and things are falling by the wayside of wherever you have the boundaries are, that is not for you to consume. That is to be given to the poor, the widows, the homeless. Now, today, everybody don't trust everybody, so you're going to let people just run up into your backyard and pick it up, right? The gleaners, but you can take it and you can donate it. So looking at the animals and knowing that, okay, one of the rules that's laid down in this paradigm is that animals that are responsible for taking care of the fecal matter, the decomposing things, leave them alone. Don't consume them. Animals that don't have the proper stomachs to break down in certain foods, don't eat them. Animals that don't have a gizzard and a stomach, leave them alone. I mean, these are different forms of halakha that's been developed over time by other groups to implement what works for them. So that is a way that we can do the same thing for us today. So this is why halakha, it fills in the blanks. But there is a method and an appropriate in halakha, so that way it follows what would have been performed today had those ancestors been alive today. And this is why you got to look at the full corpus. This is why I look at archaeology of the text and a living culture. I examine a living culture that has a lot of these practices. I examine the text for its linguistic value, its contextual values, interpretive value. And I also go into the archaeology. And with these 3 witnesses, I'm able to reconstruct the best way to apply it today. So thank you for joining in, Matthew Thomas. He said he just got off of work, jumped right into the live. Shout out to Sam Bone in the building. I don't know who else jumped in, but y'all said that you want me to start doing. Shout out to my brother Sean Henderson in the building. Shout out to Sean, who showed much love when I was out there in Gainesville, man. Shout out to the brother Berean Council. Y'all saw the video, man. We had an excellent build, man. Excellent build. People said they want to see more of it. Shout out to Tim Lindley in the building. Thank you for joining in. Vazi TM, what's going on? Mind of Joshua, what's up? Foolish World 75, Arrowhead, Sniper in the building. Matthew Yisrael in the building, Mr. Casanova 1911 in the building, Lee Brew in the building, Reckless Animosity in the building, Yala Med 77 in the building. Make sure y'all share this video everywhere. Hit the thumbs up. There's almost 100 of y'all in here late at night, almost 1:30 in the morning on a Wednesday. I gotta leave soon, family, but we're gonna get back to 1 Kings chapter 13. But I'm gonna leave soon in a minute. But I want to make sure that when people go back and watch this video, the people who have dedicated themselves to participating in the chat, to showing their love, for sharing this video, for thumbing it up, for subscribing, all my peoples, they rock with KHM, man, who's in the chat, and I appreciate them. Newcomers, veterans, people just, there's people that's lurking in there that's watching as well. We see you. Because I got a add-on that shows me the lurkers that's in. Yeah, I can see everybody that's lurking. You may not be active with the chat, but I see who's lurking. I see who's lurking. Eleazar Ben Israel in the building. And I think I covered everybody. If you want to shout out, hit 2 and I'll shout you out. All right. Meek in the spirit. Christopher Whitfield. I wouldn't go by the CIFA on that, but that's something different. All right, so let me conclude so I can go. Let me conclude so I can go. All right. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this. Anytime, S. McGee. I mean, y'all said y'all want me to do more in regards to proper halakha from the template of Torah, the minhagim or the customs, how to restore them appropriately, so that way we're applying it in alignment with the template and we're not going against the grain or doing something that's idolatrous. Right. Yes, Rodney, it does. And again, that is a form of halakha. You have two different types of halakha. You have the halakha that deals with the narrative and the halakha that deals with the legal aspect. The one I'm talking about is the legal aspect. The agadah form of halakha is something totally different. That is how you interpret the narrative to exhume the principles and apply it so that way it yields you results today, right? All right. Meek Wifey, thank you for joining in. Rodney Frederick, my brother right there, thank you for joining in. All right. Yoel says, my question has been answered. You're giving me a scripture in Jeremiah, right? Remind you, I have limited time. Shout out to Track News Live. Shalom Aleichem to you as well. I have limited time, so I cannot answer everything. And it's not done purposely to ignore you. It's just that there's some things I want to touch, some things I want to share, other questions, stuff that come in. So it's not a disrespect to you, okay? Yoel, if you want your question addressed, email me at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. So if it doesn't get addressed here, I have a reminder and we can do it in the future, all right? So it's no disrespect to you, but I wanted to get through some information as well as address the other ones that were there, all right? So Jason Brundage, if you're in Georgia, you can come up here to Atlanta. The congregation that we associate with is HCA out in Tucker, GA. Come holler at us. You know what I'm saying? Meet us. Let us talk to you. Let us greet you. Show you ahab or haba from Yah. You know what I'm saying? And just, genuinely let you know what we're doing to fix the community, and maybe you can lend your assistance to that. All right. It's okay, Yoel. Yeah, I'm glad we're on the same page. Because I'm not here to disrespect nobody, ignore nobody, belittle anybody. Y'all know that's not my heart. You feel what I'm saying? I don't get down like that unless it's an enemy. That's different, because Torah gives me that element. But if you're a brother or a neighbor or whatever, my attitude towards you is gonna be a little bit different. All right. But let's scale back for a second. Shout out to my brother Jetson in the building. What's going on? Look forward to fellowshipping with you soon, my brother. All right. So let me let's get back to 1 Kings chapter 13. I really didn't want to end off with this, but let's do it here anyway. And again, I say this because there's a lot of people that's superstitious. They say there's no human sacrifice in the scripture. It's not condoned by the deity or whatever the case may be. I went into I try to get into Quran with people to show them, right, that it's there. I think I touched on it in one of the videos when we get into Quran, and I show you that it's there, right? That's a implied human sacrifice. But let's go into 1 Kings chapter 13. 1 Kings chapter 13, verse 2. All right. Let me get into that real quick. Let me go. And this is interesting because it's going to full circle back to Josiah that was mentioned earlier by Kaya, right? But let's get into 1 Kings chapter 13, verse 1. Now behold, there came a man of God. It says man of God, right? From Judah to Bethel. Hold on. All right. So there came a man of Elohim from Judah to Bethel by the word of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, while Jeroboam was standing by the altar to burn incense. He cried against the altar by the word of Yah, saying, O altar, altar, thus saith Yah, behold, a son shall be born to the house of David, Josiah by name, and on you he shall sacrifice the priest of the high places who burn incense on you, and human bones shall be burned on you. Slow down. There's people that say, oh, there's no human sacrifice condoned in the text. And it says here, a man of Elohim from Judah came to Bethel with the word of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, while Jeroboam was standing at the altar to burn incense. He cried out against the altar by the word of Yah and said, Thus saith Yah, behold, a son shall be born to the house of David, Beit David, Josiah by name, and on you he shall sacrifice the priest. Who is this directed to? The altar shall sacrifice the priests of the high places who burn incense on you, and human bones shall be burned on you. Now, let's slow down here. People will say, oh, but when you talking about that, that's not the same thing. Is the word zabak used there? Let's see. Vayikra al ham mizbeach bidbar Yahweh vayomer mizbeach ko amar Yahweh hine ben naulad lebet David yo shayahu Semosh. And it's interesting when we see Yoshiyahu, word Yahoo there. Yahoo, again, that's the name that we use here at KHM for the Most High. We see that the theophoric title still there with Yod, Hey, Wav. That's there with the Wav having the U sound in it. Semo, We Zebach. We Zebach. Eleka et Kohane Hab Bamot Ham Machtikrin Aleka We Asmot Adam Yisrepu Al Leka. So the word is We Sebak, and he shall sacrifice. So when we see this word Zabak here, what is it referencing? Interesting. We have the direct object marker there, it before Kohane. Interesting. The priests of the high places. So we see Kohane there, which is our construct form, masculine plural construct form, which means it depends on the next item, which here is the noun feminine plural of the high places, the priests of the high places. That's interesting. And it says, the bone shall be burned of these men, Adam, shall be burned on you. Altar, misbe'ah, the altar. Interesting. If y'all think this is talking about human sacrifice, hit 1. If you're saying it's not talking about human sacrifice, hit 2. Got about 100 people in here. Y'all can give me some feedback on this. If you think it's talking about human sacrifice, hit 1. If you think it's not, hit 2. It's pretty clear. If y'all want more, let me know. But it's pretty clear. Let me know if it's pretty clear. Y'all let me know. Let's go to 2 Kings 23 and 20. And it's interesting because the capital punishment, human sacrifice for the atonement of sin in the Bible lecture, I didn't even bring this out. It was a lot. I just said I can't bring everything out. It's just a lot, right? But let's deal with this for 1 second. Let's deal with this for 1 second. 2 Kings 23 and 20. All right. This is taboo for people, but not me. It's not taboo for me. When you understand the ancient Near East, it's not taboo. All right. Let's read this. Wayizba it kal kohane chab bamot asher sam al hamis behot wayisrot it asmot adam alechem wayasab Jerusalem. Interesting. So could 2 Kings 23 and 20 be the fulfillment of 1 Kings 13 and 2? That word there for execution is there. And that word there that we see, that yisbach, what do you think that root word is? Zabak, the cow stem. Dayin beit hit. Zabak. So here's Zabak referring to the priests of the high places. It says executed. It should be he sacrificed. They put executed there. Interesting. You have the conjunctive wav there, which is an interesting feature. The cow stem there. Imperfect. That means it's going to happen. Third person masculine singular. So we have Y Yisbach there. That has to do with execution. But it's really sacrifice. You see how they hide sacrifice? They put execution in because they don't want you to see that. It says, no, it's a sacrifice. He fulfilled what was said in 1 Kings. Okay. Y'all hit one if you're saying this is not talking. If you're saying this is talking about human sacrifice, hit one. If you're saying it's not, hit two. Now, my sister, 916 Shansan, said it's not talking about human sacrifice. That's interesting. It was sanctioned by Yah. That's where it comes from. But let's read the rest of that. Let's read the rest of that. We don't want to take nothing out of context. Let's read the rest of that. It says, furthermore, the altar that was at Bethel in the high place which Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin, had made, even that altar in the high place he broke down. Then he demolished its stones, ground them to dust, and burned the Asherah. Now when Josiah turned, he saw the graves that were there on the mountain, and he sent and took the bones from the graves and burned them on the altar, and defiled it according to the word of Yah, which the man of God of Elohim proclaimed, which proclaimed these things. We just saw where it came from. Then he said, what is this monument that I see? And the men of the city told him, it is the grave of the man of God who came from Judah and proclaimed these things, which you have done against the altar of Bethel. He said, let him alone, let no one disturb his bones. So they left his bones undisturbed with the bones of the prophet who came from Samaria. Josiah also removed all the houses of the high places which were in the cities of Samaria, which the kings of Israel had made provoking Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, and he did to them just as he had done in Bethel. All the priests of the high places who were there, he sacrificed on the altars and burned human bones on them. Then he returned to Jerusalem. This was sanctioned by Yah. So if it's not talking about human sacrifice, which is interesting, what is it referring to? Mine says it was a test. Let's see if he would do it, because let's get into this a little further. Let's dive into this a little further. Then the king commanded all the people, saying, celebrate the Passover of Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, your God, or Elohim, as it is written in the book of the covenant. Surely such a Passover had not been celebrated from the days of the judges who judged Israel, nor all the days of the kings of Israel and Judah. But in the 18th year of Josiah, that Passover was observed to Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh in Jerusalem. So somebody said that this was a test. Okay. If you're saying this was a test, please break that down for us real quick before I get off of here. If you're saying it's a test, please break that down for us. Sean Fleming, you read Jasher? Yes, I do, but I can't. It's hard to antiquate the version of Jasher we have today, so I don't subscribe to its authenticity. Okay, it's very suspect. And when you look to see during that time period the beliefs of some of the Jews in Europe at that time, you see it made its way in the book of Jasher, right? And it predates the earliest manuscript of it that we have today, right? Or a book that we have of it today. Now, thank you. See, this is why 19916 Shan, this is why you here. I appreciate that. You said Josiah's desecrating the altar being foreseen. Yah did not honor what Josiah did. So, sis, here's the question. How would you harmonize the 1 Kings and 2 Kings references in regards to this? Because you're saying that Yah did not honor what he did. Give us a little bit of backdrop. See, I love how she thinks critically and is providing feedback. Please give it to us, sis, before we leave, and I'll give my commentary, and we'll end it off on here. And again, my condolences to the sister. Y'all keep the sister in prayer. She had a loved one that had passed recently. Please pray for her. If y'all know her, reach out to her, show her some love and support, and help the sister get through. I know what it's like to lose a loved one. I lost one in February, which y'all know of. And the sister, she's going through it right now, but she still made her way here. So I'm very appreciative of having her, you know what I'm saying? And look forward to having her on a future show. But give some time, a little more time now, given the circumstance with her family. All right. So I'm waiting on you, sis. Provide your feedback. Let's see it. And I'm gonna wrap up with that. But while she's doing that, should I bring out one more thing? I don't know if I should bring out one more thing. Do we have time to bring out what I want to bring out, what I want to talk on? Thank you, Valley, for praying for the sister. Okay, I'm gonna wait for you, sis. And I want it derived from you, because I know you read a lot of commentaries too. That's why you're pretty sharp, and I know you go with the language as well. So let's have it, sis. All right. So while we do that, right, Rodney, facts. Sean, you say that, but you gotta give yourself a little more credit. It's just that the epiphanies are going to come, and then you're going to see a lot of this stuff, and it'll help put things in proper perspective. Because some people would just dismiss it outright altogether and be like, "Oh, this is," but it's like, no, that's we're Israelites here, right? We identify as Israelites, right? Through West Africa, from Israel. Okay, West Africa is extremely important, and for us to properly appropriate certain practices that was preserved there in that region that's still being done today. Even the sacrifice of certain animals are being done there today. And being able to parse out what we need to understand the halakha of how things should be performed as it was preserved back then, using the scriptures, the template, the archaeology template, and a modern or a culture that's here that's still doing things today that can be empirically observed in order to harmonize everything. This helps certain things to settle. It shows you the layers, and it gives you the depth that you need to go further into your studies to connect closer with Yah. I mean, there's things that I've taught on here, biblical meditation. I mean, when we go back into looking at certain practices, are we doing it properly, right? If go back and look at that meditation by the book, check that out. That's a prescription for y'all who want to know how to properly meditate as culturally prescribed by the text. It's there. Okay, it's there. All right. So there's a lot of things we talk. I mean, like I said, if you go through the litany of material and content on this channel, you're gonna see a lot of stuff there that will help to show you when people say spirituality, like you got to define spiritual. What's spirituality? If you say it's being led by the Ruach, so the restoration of your culture cannot be led by the Ruach. How could the Ruach give you understanding and at the same time displace you from the initial establishment of certain things that was led by the Ruach? You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Sean Fleming in the building. I'm waiting on my sister to put some information there. Arrowhead Sniper, I wholly disagree of Israel being in America. I mean, I had a discussion with somebody, I think it was on this channel, that was proposed at that, and I just asked a simple question. I was like, all right, hold on. So if you're saying that Israel's in America, there's certain animals that's mentioned in the text. They're not indigenous to that part of America that you're saying Israel is at. Where did those animals come from? It's just simple stuff, just common sense stuff. I talk about the weather season. I'm like, hey, okay, the text, it acknowledges that there's a rainy season during a particular period of time. This region in America, does it have the same rainy season? Does it also produce certain crops? Does it bring forth barley and pomegranates and honey dates? And are these things indigenous to that region in America as well? How do you harmonize that? This is just common sense stuff. Just common sense stuff. Sean, great question. I do shout out to New Black World Order in the building. I do address that in my lecture. Okay. Great point, sis. Great point. You said he did not initially get rid of the idolatry until Huldah told the priest what Yah said, then he got rid of it. I agree. Now, the question, sis, is did he sacrifice those priests on the altars in those regions of the priests of the high places, that he sacrificed them on the altars in the same region where that man of Elohim from Judah spoke to Jeroboam at. That's the question. Okay, that's the question. Yeah, Awake Network with Pastor Barry Lyons. Shout out to Awake Network in the building. Yeah, people say it's in Kenya. People say that it's in North America. I've even heard some people say that the Incas was the Israelites in South America. I've heard a lot of this stuff, but when you just read the text, it's just look for things that are indigenous to you. Look at the material culture that the text is talking about. Right? What's material culture? Is different plants that's in the area, different crops that grow in the area, the weather conditions in that area, the animals that's in the area. And if you see a place that they say is Israel and these things do not exist that's in the text, somebody's reaching like Stretch Armstrong. They reaching like Mr. Fantastic and the Fantastic Four. Extreme reach. I see why they say that, but the text is the thing that is disagreeing with you, not me. All right. For His Glory 24:19, your thoughts on children under the age of 8 playing on the Sabbath. I don't see no restriction in the written text against that. People might say, oh, that's going into your pleasures. Well, define playing. When children play, these are skills that they're developing that they need to utilize when they get older. So if your children are playing on the Sabbath, and the Sabbath is the day of rest, their playing activities should not include anything that would be normal work routines or things that require work. And the way they play should be centered on the resting of, I'll give you an example. So when I was at the event in Detroit, not too long ago, there was a sister that was there that was selling a board game, an Israelite board game. Extremely interesting. I have the information. I'm going to probably show y'all on here so you can support the sister. And then there was a brother that was there that had a book, right? And the book it's called, what is it called? I forgot the name of the book. Man, I must be tired. But anyway, they had materials that kids can utilize and they can use to get more culturally anchored, and as well as a means of having fun, during the Sabbath. Okay. So there are things that you can do that kids can do creatively, productively, constructively, that does not denote work or laborious work, that can be done in order to increase their skills that they'll need later on in life. And also something that will, that when people see them playing in this form, it shows them as being Kodesh or set apart. Right. So that's what I'm saying. Okay. Now, while the sister 916 Shanshan, I'm sure she's still there. There are lexicons like the Dictionary of Classical Hebrew, the one that I told you about earlier by David Kleins, David J.A. Kleins, from the University of Sheffield. His lexicon is one of many that shows the word zabach there and says it means to kill human beings, perhaps as a sacrifice. And the reason why they have to add perhaps there is because it's taboo. So what we do here is we unravel and remove the taboo, because that hinders you from understanding the text within the context of the culture that created it, or that influenced it, or that it was derived from. And when you have that taboo front and center, certain things you just stubbornly refuse. And not saying that the sister's doing that. I'm not talking about her. If she was doing that, she wouldn't be on this channel. But I'm saying some people do that. So look, watch this, right? This is an article called Introducing the Dictionary of Classical Hebrew, right, by David J.A. Kleins, right? And again, this is one of the lexicons that I use. And he gives a little bit more information on the word zabach, right? And it says these are just the first 3 paragraphs of the article. They are 25 paragraphs together for the whole article. I have the ebook form of it, but the physical form is on its way. When I get it, oh man, I'm gonna go in. I love lexicons. I'm gonna dive right into it. But it says the lemma, the head word is zabach, It is in red here only because that is the hit that was found when he searched for an occurrence. Following the lemma comes the occurrence statistics. Number of occurrences in the Hebrew Bible, Ben Sira, Dead Sea Scrolls, and inscriptions. There is no figure here for the fourth corpus because the word does not occur in the inscriptions. Then there is the part of speech, the verb, and a simple gloss, which is sacrifice. So now he's calling the word sacrifice a gloss. All right. Hold on 1 second. Yes. What's going on? You need to be sleeping. You know that, right? What? Okay. Hold on, y'all. Okay. Let me wrap up. Sorry about that. Let me wrap up so I can finish up here at home so I can go to bed. But he goes on to say, next comes a first voice to cow, which is occurrences, statistics, follow all form, blah, blah. There's a description which includes various shades of meaning and different uses, such as slaughter for sacrifice, slaughter for non-sacrificial eating, if the various meanings are rather more distinct in here. Next comes the subjects of the verbs preceded by the subject, all right? Which means he's showing you or introducing you to how his lexicon works, how it's broken down. And when it goes into the cow stem, which we see in there in Second Kings, where it's talking about the slaughter of the sacrifice, what we also see in First Kings, slaughter as a sacrifice, right? These people are being slaughtered on an altar, they're being killed, they're being butchered, right? Because they are doing something detestable. And this is a requirement for idolatry, is death. They're executing individuals. But what happens is that the taboo seems to hinder us from accepting what the text is saying, right? No. 916 Shanshan. I'm not saying that's the altar that Yah honored. I'm not saying that. So maybe that's where I think that there's a disconnect with us. I'm not saying that they were slaughtered on the altar that Yah honored. I'm saying they were slaughtered on the altar that the text says Jeroboam had created and allowed these priests to create, that they were killed on the same altar that they were performing sacrifices to other deities, right, outside of Yah. Okay. So, but they were zabak, they were sacrificed there. The same word used for the ritual killing of animals as a sacrifice happened to these priests as well. So I got you. I'm not saying that, but I'm just sharing that, right? But yeah, like I said, I'm waiting on the physical copy. I got the ebook, but I'm reading what I was reading to you, introducing the Dictionary of Biblical of Classical Hebrew. Is I'm trying to show you, even when they had listed out the various uses of the word zabak there for sacrifice or slaughter, whatever the case may be, they're trying to show you the semantic domain and a full spectrum application of the word. And it's the way that they consorted the text. I mean, the entry. And it's a very logical means of breaking it down, parsing it out, so that way it can be better applied. But the bottom line I'm saying is that human sacrifice, as we see in First Kings, Yah sanctioned it and it was performed. That's it. I'm not saying it was done on the sacrifice. I mean, the altar in Jerusalem. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying Yah sanctioned it and they carried it out. And the word zabak is used there. Every lexicon will give that entry for the word zabak. Now, sometimes they may say execute. They may give it a gloss because sacrifice is too taboo, right? And if you're a Judeo-Christian, saying that human beings should be sacrificed, that's like, whoa. But see, when I read it in English before I learned the language, I thought it just said execute. All right, they just executed them. But when you see it's the same word, zabach, now you got to go, things that make you go, right? So again, family, I want to get y'all past the dogma, past the taboos. I want you to look at the culture naked for what it is. Accept all of the intimate parts of it that is normally covered up and dressed up by religious leaders, right? And understand the composition of the text is not what we think it is. It was not written by one person. It was not put together by one group. It's what we have today is not the autographs, right? So there's certain things we have to keep in mind in doing our studies. But what I will say is if you follow KHM, if you follow us on this journey and allow me to be the mouthpiece to put these bugs in your ear, so that way you can do your research behind what I say, because I'm not telling you to believe anything I say. Go back and research. I'm just using sources. Go back and research what I'm saying. And get things to the point where we're examining the social structure of the community, right? Of the community back then. What is the social structure, right? Examine things such as the oral literature. I mean, the oral tradition that made its way in the literature and how to identify that, okay? You know, looking at things such as the archaeology, right? Which we also get in oral tradition. The oral tradition is where they talk about the archaeology. But going into the archaeology that talks about things like how bread is made, you know, during that time period, which I thought was fascinating. See, breaking bread in ancient Judah. And you're like, wow, this, you know, you when you go to the store and you get bread, that's not what they did back then. They had to make it. And a lot of times you get stony grits in the bread because of how they had to grind it. So, you know, people a lot of times, you know, they'd have like grit in their stomach, almost like a gizzard. You know what I'm saying? And their teeth was also corroded by the grit as well in bread. But bread was, you know, lechem was a primary source of sustenance for the people. Hence why you see it figuratively everywhere throughout the text. Okay, even Bethlehem, the house of bread, the house of sustenance. Okay, when you take the time and you do these things, and we try to make it easy for you, right? I try to show you what books to get, what articles to read, what essays to look for, etc. I try to give you the citations to make things clear and plain, so you can pick up and do exceedingly better than what I'm doing. Hopefully, come back and share your analysis. It's so that way we can have cultural autonomy. Because I'm gonna end off with this: KHM, Kingdom Harbinger Ministries, right? If you're still with those of you out there still want to join, go ahead and send the email. We're gonna put some of you on the waiting list because we still got to do onboard intake, and we're trying a new process. And I'm getting a software now that's gonna make things easier. But those of you who want membership, email us, hit membership. You can see what we do in the community. Get into the private discussions that we have in regard to text. Get your questions answered. Patreon members, you know, they get questions answered. People that's part of KHM, they get certain questions answered that we're not able to do publicly like this. But those of you who get involved with KHM, I want you to understand the purpose of this ministry, right? The purpose of this ministry is the kingdom that we're talking about is Yah's sphere of influence. And it's the sphere of influence sans the king, right? Meaning the pre-exilic model. The king representation that we have, that people use Yeshua or Yeshua Bar Yosef, plays another role in regards to that sphere of influence and the way that in the information that he brought to us to assist with our role at this period of time. But a kingdom harbinger is Yah's sphere of influence. We are to go before this sphere of influence, whether we're going to talk about it in a spiritual matter, a figurative matter, a physical matter. And what a harbinger does is that they announce the arrival of this sphere of influence, and they make preparations for it to arrive. So until we are able to achieve cultural autonomy in our communities, the sphere of influence of Yah that we call the kingdom will never appear. It will never show up. When Yeshua says that the kingdom is amongst you, how can it be amongst us if we're not ingrained back into a culture that aligned the ancestors with the sphere influence of the Yah? That is what we're trying to restore and reconstruct. And with that, we can have more close-knit communities, and we'll be the owners of what it is that we subscribe to, and we'll not have to lean on the religious affairs, dialectics, and so forth of others. All right. So, I mean, like I said, family, that's all I want to do. Thank you for your time. I'm about to wrap up. because one of these little ones is awake right now. You want to say hi?
Yeah.
Come here. And I normally don't do this, but I'm gonna do it. So one of the little ones is up here with me right now. So this type of thinking, this type of understanding is extremely integral for us to be able to rightly align ourselves with our spirituality, because if we are not in alignment with that spirituality and we get frustrated, we get stuck in a rut, we wonder why certain things are not happening, not moving for us, is because the application of our spirituality has been lost in translation. It's been lost. So KHM, we want to restore that so the full influence and the sphere of Yah's influence can arrive and can be amongst his people. All right. So I'm hoping that that helps. Say hi. Say hi to everybody.
Hi.
Wave, say hi. All right. And I'm going to go and help put this little one to bed. But we want to be able to make things more actual for you, for your family, for your community. And this is why we do what we do. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to continue to push. We're going to continue to go against the grain in some areas. We're going to continue to help to anchor people who may get lost with this new information and not know where to go. Again, go back to the content on this channel. There's over 200 plus videos that can help walk you through some stuff. But I'm telling you, this type of information is really life-changing, and we need to inspire more of our community to dive into these subject matters to be able to better restore cultural autonomy so we can be a more close-knit community that other ethnic groups enjoy, and we can usher in the influence, the sphere of influence of Yah, and we can show the world what a light really looks like in this secular gloom of darkness that is amongst us. We have that right. It's not to colonize and say, I'm better than you and I'm Judah, I'm this. No, it's the egalitarian model that shows that everybody in the community has an equal but separate role, and it's our responsibility to work closely with one another, lifting each other up, reaching back and grabbing somebody. Somebody falls, you reach down, pick them up. If they're behind you, you stop and wait till they catch up and you walk side by side with them. Right? If they're ahead of you, you holler out to them, say, hey, can you wait up? Can you help me to catch up? This is our obligation to each other. This is a race, and it's not going to be complete until we out of here. And if you're still watching this, you're still part of that race. All right. So with that, family, you'll have the information in the description if you want to donate and support the ministry. Like this video, share this video. Share this information to everybody you know, man. And I thank all of you for watching. Shout out to Gathering of Israelite Nation, Netherlands in the building. Saruka Israel in the building. What's going on? And everybody else that tuned in. All right. So get wise. What's going on? So I'm going to highlight y'all next live. Let me wrap up here at home. Y'all keep me in your prayers. Pray for my sister, 916 Shan as well. Pray, support. Like I said, y'all can reach out to me. My social media information is there in the description if y'all need to reach out. Email kingdomharbinger@gmail.com. If you have any questions, any suggestions, need any assistance, if we can help in any way, let us know. You know what I'm saying? Because we want to thank everybody for the continuous help that you give to us. And we're going to keep you all in our prayers. All right. So with that, family, I love you. Peace and shalom. Say shalom. Say shalom. Say shalom. Say shalom.
Shalom.